Hello, everybody. I'm Deserie Foley from PAX International, and welcome to our 5th episode of Digital Minds Deciphered. Please support our channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to our channel to help us out. We're going to try to interview at least one person every week, and I am here with my co-host, Steven.
Hi, everybody. Steven Dubuque here. I live in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I'm super excited about tonight. I have my friend Dane here with us. I'm excited for this for a lot of reasons. So first of all, his YouTube channel is Transmundane. And I didn't know this at first, but actually that is a word that, if you look it up, means reaching beyond or existing outside the physical or visible world. And if you've watched any of his videos, like I have, I've pretty much watched all of them. He definitely talks about gangstalking and how he was living in sin, living not so great life, but that he did find Jesus and he found some freedom from gangstalking. And I know that he accredits that to the Holy Spirit, to God, to Jesus. I do as well, and I know that I don't talk about it in my videos a lot. And the reason I don't is because So I'm just going to say this really quickly. Like, I believe that Jesus delivered me from targeting and gang stalking. I believe that that's how it worked for me. However, I'm careful to say that on my videos because I don't want to say that that's going to work for somebody else. It's different for every person. But in any event, I'm really excited that we have Dane on here today. I've talked to him a lot. We keep in touch every now and then. And so, yeah, I have Dane here. So, Dane, can you tell us what happened at first when you started noticing that there was something weird going on, that you might be going through something known as gang stalking or targeting?
Yeah, just to back up a little before that, I came across certain videos on YouTube that were talking about targeting, and when I first saw them, I'm like, these people are tripping, I don't see how that could be possible. And then, when it started happening to me, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I think this is a real thing that's going on, And so for me, everyone talks about where things became, in their own story, where it became obvious that things weren't normal, right? And so for me, it happened at a all-time low in my life too. Like, I was battling severe drug addiction, right, for years, and was finally kind of making some progress because I started really seeking God, but I'm still so bonded to these drugs. And I had some experience with the Lord, but just no foundation, and my addictions were still heavy. So I had a bit of sobriety, a few weeks, and then I backslid and ended up on the street, just kind of trying to run from all the good people in my life. And just pretty much any accountability or anyone that loved me, I was just like, okay, I'm sick of being this person. So I was basically running from myself, from God, from anything good. And so I found myself on the streets of Seattle, and within a week or two of being on the street, and this is after I accepted the Lord, have the Holy Spirit, I started noticing that there were strange things that I never really experienced before. And I kind of view that as kind of being awakened spiritually, But what I started noticing, to answer your question, I started noticing there was people around me that were showing up and just kind of watching, and I'm like, when it first started happening, I thought it was the area I was in, kind of like when this happens to any of us, we're looking for answers. We're just trying to make any sort of sense of it. Right. And so I'm like, what's going on here? These people are showing up and just kind of hanging out, watching. And it started with me, the signaling, and I noticed that they were all communicating with each other. And so when I started asking the people that stayed out there, I'm like, hey, what's up with these people out here that are coming and watching and communicating to each other. And everyone's like, start gaslighting me. Oh, you're tripping. We don't know what you're talking about. Just no one would talk about it. And then it was maybe a week or so later after I'm like trying to find out answers. I'm like, dude, I see what's going on, but I don't know what it is. You know, you can't convince me it's not going on because I'm watching it. But one gal came up to me, never spoke to her before. And she said, hey, you know, like out of the blue, you know, she said hi and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden she goes, hey, by the way, you're not crazy. I see them too. And then she said, the baseballers, right? And it was kind of like, you know, the baseball signals. And I played baseball. I played college baseball, grew up playing it. And so it's like, I don't know if that's something that kind of tailored towards me, but there's a communication system in baseball where, you know, without speaking, you do hand signals and stuff. So I don't know if that was tailored to me, but I've noticed in other people's stories that does happen at times. But that's the first thing I like overtly picked up. And then I had people coming to me trying to basically tell me why it was happening. So that's the first thing that I noticed. But as soon as I started asking people about it, things progressed. Now it went from like it happening in a broad sense to it really like zooming in on me, it felt like, you know. And then when I was not just in this area, because I was on this certain block in Seattle where I was like living and selling drugs and, you know, just like surviving out there. And then it started going everywhere with me, you know. So after that, man, as you know, and Deserie know, like the stuff just gets so crazy, man. And it's like some of the stuff is so hard to put into words that I don't even like to try with certain things. So there's much more to this. And as you said, I make videos and I try to put a scope on what I'm talking about. But yeah, so any questions that you have, I can just kind of answer them and try to keep it on a scope. But yeah, it went crazy for sure.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that. I do have a question for you, which I seem to like to ask this question for everybody because I'm so curious about it all the time. I know as for me, you know, before I was targeted, I had a lot of like spiritual experiences, like a lot since I was a child. I mean, so many that I can't even like count on how many times I had it. So I like to ask people questions too, because I'm trying to learn and understand as well. Have you ever had any spiritual experiences before this started happening to you?
I would say yes, but not. Okay, so I did have an experience with God before this. Like I had actually, in my addiction, I started looking at people's testimonies, personal testimonies that were talking about how they had experience with Jesus and how it altered their life and changed their life, you know. And I'm so stuck in my addiction that I'm like, God used that to draw me. And so basically, I like I said, I went through a brief sobriety stint where I actually started going to church. I received the Lord, and nothing happened right away. But the first time I relapsed, like God had spoke to me through 4 different sources in the same day and told me that I had to let his love in to work through me. And so that was my first experience of like actually knowing that God was like, you know, drawing me and was real and personal. And it drew my heart towards him. But like I said, I had so many like bad addictions and just, you know, ways of living that was not in line with truth. So basically that was my first experience. And then I relapsed and ended out on the street. And that's when all my real experiences started, you know, with as far as like, I would say supernatural stuff, but all that was pretty much like dark side when I was on the street. I mean, I can get into some of those encounters too, but like pretty obviously demonic encounters. But as far as like before that point, you know, up until this would happen when I was 26. I'm 32 now. But nothing crazy like growing up that I could really point to. But again, I feel like I had a veil over my eyes and like spiritually, I just wasn't really open. I looked at the world very surface level and fleshly. So
do you think that that during this program, this targeting, that it does something to the mind where it opens up doors or thins the veil? Do you think that that's happening? Because I mean, all of a sudden, you can be living a normal life, and then all of a sudden you're targeted, and then now you're having all these experiences, not just with the technology, but also with spirits. And I mean, I always thought that there's something that is being done to the brain, or there's a door that's being opened that's giving us access to that other dimension, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think there is some of that. I don't know, like, I mean, I can guess and things like that, but I do know that, like, what we experience in the physical, there's also a spiritual dimension to that. And I think, like I said, I was blind to it in a large way. And it says that in the Bible, it says that people have been blinded by the God of this world, which is Satan, and then once we receive Jesus and we get the Holy Spirit, our eyes are open, our spiritual eyes. We have a capacity to, like, kind of discern spiritual things. And so as far as them being able to do that to you, maybe they can do that at some point. And I also know that, drug use is a form of, witchcraft as well. It's like that opens you up spiritually. And I was partaking in drugs,
Potion.
and it's like,
It's a potion
of course,
and spell.
psychedelic experiences, all that stuff is like you're opening yourself up spiritually. So, yeah.
Yeah. I meant to say this in the intro, but Dane, I just really want to thank you, man. Like, you were really instrumental to me. Like, before I knew about the terms targeting or gang stalking, like, I just thought I was some guy with this crazy story. And I didn't know, like, I'm not going to say you were single-handedly the one who made it all clear for me, but you definitely were one of the main ones, man. I really believe that God put you in my life. I instantly felt drawn to you and your stories. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what happened to me. And more so as I heard more and more stories of yours, like, and you mentioned before that we started this call, you mentioned that you didn't have a lot of targeting, but, I mean, I can think of, just from hearing your story, I can think of a few examples, like, the shadows, on the RV, the shadow display on that side of the RV. Like, I had a shadow figure on my wall. Like, I had the same kind of thing I had, which involved light displays. You saw, and I just used this for my last video I put up, because you're the first person I've heard mention it. Like, you were looking at something when you saw, like, a video clip of you from, like, in your case, it was on, like, a DVD main menu screen.
Yeah.
In my case, it was on a flashlight. So, I mean, that's some pretty, like, specific things to happen to people. So anyway, I felt drawn to, like, connect with you, and I'm glad we finally did. But I also wanted to ask you about, and I'm not saying that we have the same stories. We have plenty of differences in our stories, but I can definitely relate. But I did want to ask you about the correlation that you find between gang stalking and drugs. And I'm sorry if this offends people, but, like, also not really sorry. Like, I'm always going to be interested in the things that I experienced going through this. And my experience has been that when I was, I've struggled with drug addiction for most of my adult life, but it wasn't until 2021 when all this stuff started happening. And since 2021, the only breaks I've gotten from it was when I was sober. And this current break I'm on, which is a year and a half, which is how long I've been sober. I'm curious what the correlation you make between drugs and gang stalking is, if any.
Yeah. I think that, if you look up pharmakeia, which is the root word for pharmacy, you can kind of get to a conclusion that there's spirits involved with drugs, and I'm not, like, I don't want to get into the topic of, like, all medications are pharmakeia, or, it's like pharmakeia is basically another word for sorcery. So I've kind of had some revelation where it's like when you're participating in these drug rituals, which they pretty much are. You think about the act of getting high. It's like, you're doing a little ritual for a desired effect. So basically you're making contracts with spirits to give you energy, joy, happiness, euphoria, but that comes at a cost. So I think when you are doing drugs, it does open you up spiritually. Like, you can be ignorant to spiritual reality like I was for many years. You can try to ignore them or not look at it, but that doesn't stop it from being a reality. And so with this whole targeting, kind of as you alluded to, I have found freedom in Christ and just looking at everything spiritually, like in a broad sense. And I like to go into like maybe some smaller areas of like, why does this happen and stuff. I think we all do, because it's like, it's such a peculiar thing for this to be happening, right? It's just like, I mean, and most people don't believe you, but as you said, like hearing someone tell their story and kind of put it out there, it's like, I realized, also listening to other people, that there seems to be like a formula to some degree, and it varies a little bit, but like different tactics they use, as far as like the gaslighting or, the vehicles, the things that they trigger you towards, people knowing stuff about you. Just like there's a broad array of, I like to call them tactics that you will experience as a target or someone who's going through gang stalking. But yeah, it's a huge thing, right? And you can go off into all these little topics, but I think there definitely is a correlation with the drug use. I know that's not everyone's story. And there are definitely people who don't use drugs that are experiencing the same things that people are on drugs, So, but to be fair, I used drugs for many years before this, and the kicker for me was like within a couple of weeks after receiving Jesus, that's when this stuff started really happening to me. So I've always found that like strange for the timing of all that, because like I didn't have any of these experiences, and then all of it just started and didn't stop until I submitted to God fully.
Oh, wow. And when you were being targeted, did anybody like talk to you and tell you what it was called? Like for me, when I was going through this for like a year or something like that, and I was actually put into a behavioral hospital because I didn't know. I literally told the cops I was under some kind of mind control experiment.
Yep.
And which obviously it was stupid that I said that, but anyways, they ended up taking me to a hospital. And while I was in there, I met a homeless man who tried to commit suicide, and he threw himself in front of traffic and it ran him over. So he had like a broken arm, a broken like ribs and stuff. He was he was pretty young, and then I met him in there, and then I had told him, that what was happening to me. And then that's when he said the same thing was happening to him. That's why he tried to kill himself. And that it was called gang stalking. That's how I found out about it. How did you find out what it was called?
So I was pretty into like all the conspiracies and stuff, and that's kind of the thing that pointed me towards God, right? So I started realizing how the world is ran, and just not to get too much into that, but I came across some gang stalking videos a couple years before this happened to me. So, and I already, like, when I saw them, I dismissed it. I'm like, this is a little too out there, right? This seems like these people are just paranoid and all this. So when it started happening to me, I remembered those videos that I saw, and I actually remember watching one that was talking about how it's demonic spirits that are working through people, and that always like stayed with me. So when it started happening to me, I had already known about it, and I just I'm like, okay, yeah, people are definitely going to believe me, right? And so as you said, that can be dangerous, and I've made videos about that. Like, be careful what you
Right.
talk about, because the honest truth is most people, as soon as you say something that's like against their worldview or understanding, they're going to question your sanity. And it's like, in the broad sense of that, is like, it discredits you for the long haul. If someone looks at you crazy one time,
Because everybody's
that's so hard to
programmed.
get rid of.
We're all programmed to believe that that doesn't exist. That only happens in the movies. So if you say it's
Yes.
happening to you, you're like, oh, you saw that in a movie. And it's a
Yeah.
programming that everybody has.
Yes. And like, Okay, so if you started talking about it, what it sounds like, it does sound like schizophrenia. Like, like you, even to me, when someone starts talking to me about it, like you said, that programming in me wants to think, oh, is this, immediately you start questioning
I
that,
know
but
what
it's
you're
happened
talking
to me,
about.
so I know it's real. So it's like,
Yeah.
you're 100% right on the programming piece. And like, what's funny on that subject, kind of like, I haven't done a ton of research into it, but I know you're up to speed on this because just from some of the things you said and the type of channel you have, like, as far as the MK Ultra and the trauma-based mind control, I think they play into each other somehow. I don't know how, but what I realized with what was going on with me, they were doing certain triggers, like it could be colors, it could be sounds, it could be phrases, and it's like they attach this trauma to these triggers so they can access that trauma just by giving you the trigger. And that's kind of deep, but that's just what I've noticed with me, even before knowing about MK Ultra and stuff. But that's kind of how they do that, and then they cause you to dissociate, and that's a whole nother thing. But there is some parallels between the targeting and trauma-based mind control, in my opinion. I just don't know how deep that goes.
For sure. It's they sensitize you to colors and even car colors, that a certain color that you'll see. And then any normal person, say my mom was like outside and these red cars kept coming by, and she's not even going to like phase it, like she won't even like look at it and notice it. But somebody that's been sensitized to red cars, there's one red car, there's two, there's three, there's four, and then you're programmed to see that because you're sensitized to it. And that's what happens to a targeted individual. Somebody else may not notice those gestures, but we have been programmed and sensitized to notice it. So that's the difference between our minds and somebody else that's not being messed with.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's very subtle. Like other people don't really notice because it's like it can be normal sounds or normal things, but it happens so often that when you're going through the targeting, it's like, that mathematically, like, this happening so often is just so impossible. It's like one thing to find a dollar bill on the ground, but if you found a dollar bill on the ground every single day, 3 times a day, it's like, yeah, that's possible, but it's not likely at all. And it's actually very so it's stuff like that that's like, and just talking about it too, it's like people immediately almost stop listening to you. That's what I notice, is like they'll just shut you off, like they won't continue listening. So
yeah. Hey, so just to back up a little bit, it got me thinking. Deserie asked you when you first heard about like what you were going through, like if anybody told you what a targeted individual was or what gangstalking was. Just you might find this interesting, Dane. Like how I found out was I was at another reason why I think God like put certain people in my life. I was at this halfway house that I was living at before I got my apartment here, and one of the staff members there, I just noticed he was watching these videos on his phone. I'd have to come in the office for a few minutes, and there were videos about like the alien end time deception, New World Order, stuff like that, and I was like, man, what is this guy? What is this guy watching? I used to think all that stuff was like just crazy, and but we started talking. We formed a relationship. He started sending me these videos, and the more I watched, like the more my eyes opened to like the evil in this world. That's what brought me closer to Jesus this time. Was like, oh my gosh, like all these Hollywood actors with their hand with their symbols and all this stuff that's everywhere in media. Like it opened my eyes to the evil in the world. And then as I'm getting into that and getting into these videos, then I start seeing about like transhumanism and what they're planning on doing with technology and all that. And that's when I got led to videos like yours, Dane. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And he's still the guy he got me involved in the church I'm at now. And we go to church almost every Sunday. But yeah, I just it's another person I firmly believe that God put in my life. But I guess my question would be what like your channel is awesome, man. Your channel is really good. your videos, and they reach a lot of people. I see the comments on your videos and stuff too. You're doing some really great stuff, man. I guess I would just ask, like, what inspired you to start your channel or to start making videos? How did that happen?
So yeah, that's a good question, Steven. It's, first of all, thank you. That's the reason why I do it, because there are so many people that are just, dismantled and broken over this stuff. They don't know what's going on. They question their sanity. Like, we all know, as people who have gone through it, that time where it first starts happening, your reality is just being shattered. Like, and it's so confusing because you have nothing to hold on to, right? And when I was going through it, like, I believe God allowed it for me, so I could, so I want to say a lot of things right now, but my overall view of the whole thing now is I'm grateful for this whole situation, because it taught me how to really focus on me. Because of everything that was going on around me, I had to basically, like, go inward and really, like, look at myself. And the evil that I was seeing around me, like God pointed out, I have very similar qualities in me, and it disgusts me in a lot of ways. Like, it was like I was looking at them, and this is the trap where we're, like, always so outward focused. There's no real benefit to that. We're looking at, like, oh, this is unfair, I'm a victim, these people are evil. It's like, yeah, that's true, but what benefit is that to look outward? It's like, you make sure that stuff that's happening to you, you're not doing to other people, right? So what this did for me was, like, it almost polarized, like, good and evil. And dude, it just taught me so much, like, about myself, about God, about people who are lost, about the world in general. And so basically, all this stuff, as the Bible says, what the enemy meant for evil, God will use for good. And I'm not saying, like, God caused all this, but he did use it. What the enemy meant for evil, God used it to shape me and, like, purify me, and then, so, like, with that perspective, I know that's hard. That's a hard place for some people to get to. It really is. And it's just, like, I believe that with the proper perspective, like I don't want to say it's a good thing, but, like, God can use anything for good. He really can. That's why he's God, And so my motivation for making my videos is to just point people to what has helped me, information that I feel like has been beneficial to me. I didn't really have it when I was going through it, because I was on the street. I didn't have a phone. It kept me away from, like, any sort of info, like, that could help me. But that also worked for my benefit, I believe, because I really had to lean on God and, like, put my trust in him. And he showed me a lot of things through it. So yeah, man, like, there's so many things I want to say, right? But yeah, I think we're definitely gonna have to do a part 2, man, for real, because there's a lot of stuff I want to get into.
For sure. But just to piggyback on that, when I first made a video 10 years ago, there was only, like, maybe 10, 15 videos out there on YouTube, just so you know. So when I decided, like, I knew, like, I have to, like, let people know that this is going on. And I said, I don't know how anyone's going to view it, because there's only 15 videos, and I watched out all 15 of them because there wasn't very many. And I put mine out there, and then I remember the first day I got, like, 100 views, and I was, like, doing, like, a little dance. I was like, 100 people watched my video, and I was, like, so happy. And when I did that, then all of a sudden I started getting people reaching out to me, more people reaching out to me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is big. This is happening to so many different people. And then that's when I decided, like I said, well, I think this is my life journey. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be exposing this program, and that it is God's work. It is why we're here. We are on this mission. And I actually just told somebody the other day, the greatest gift that anybody has ever given me was darkness. And when they gave me that darkness is where I found my light.
Amen.
So I know exactly what you're talking, because I went through the same thing with saying, okay, I gotta reach other people, and I gotta let people know what's happening. So, okay, so my next question is do you get any of the voice to skull, the directed energy weapons, or anything like that?
Yeah, so so that's kind of a deep question. Like, as far as right now, I don't experience anything, for almost the last 2 years, but I had a couple experiences that were weird. But like a lot of my stuff was like through people, and I know that's not everyone's case. A lot of people are like, yeah, direct energy weapons, all that stuff. I don't know a ton about that, but I do know there were weird things that happened. Like, I'll just tell you one story. Steven might have seen this one. It's on one of my older videos, but I was in a bathroom, and I was using drugs, right? And I wasn't in there very long, but while I was in there, I heard outside the bathroom, I heard someone open the door of the restaurant, because there's like bells on it, it opened up, and it's like the textbook sound of a cop with a big set of keys, jingling like a guard almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear him, and he says, "Where is he at?" All mean and authoritative. And then I hear someone reply to him, "He's in the bathroom." And here's the thing: as soon as he asked that, and they said he's in the bathroom, the doorknob started jiggling, like someone was trying to get in. And I'm like, "What the heck?" Like, I'm like, why would they want me? I don't know. Anyways, I get all like sketched out. I end up like flushing drugs. And I go out, and there's absolutely no one out there, And like,
Wow.
most of the time I don't tell stories like that because people are like, "Oh, you're on drugs." It's like, yeah, I was, but like, I know what being on drugs is like. And like, this was all happening at once with the targeting, with the gang stalking. Like, that was a weird experience. That wasn't normal, like physical manifestation of the door handle moving, as well as the voices. I wasn't tripped out at all before this happened. I was just using, and then I hear all that. It wasn't like I was paranoid and, oh man, but that was one experience. And then as far as other voice to skull things, like, I'm not really sure about certain situations. Like, whenever I would hear people say weird things, it was always when someone was potentially around. So, for example, one time I had a pistol, and I went into like this little cutout off the sidewalk. Like, I went into this little part of this building to like rearrange it, and I ended up dropping it. Right, I dropped it on the ground, and I heard like down the street, they said, "Oh no, he's gonna end up shooting himself." No one could see me. Like, there was no eyes on me. No one should have known I had that. But I heard it audibly. That's what it sounded like. And other situations, like just people saying really snide remarks that I don't know if they're actually coming from those people, like, because they were very quirky. Like, one time, so I'm on the street, and I found like a scarf, and I had it on. He's like, someone was like walking behind me, and I heard, this is pretty funny. They're like, "Look at this classy bum right here." It was funny. So like, they're like really like quirky comments that I was like, man, that kind of hurt to hear, but I was like, that's funny though, But and it was like clever. So I don't know. That was kind of my potentially voice to skull stuff. But as far as like being shocked or those pulses or anything like that, I didn't really have experiences with that, as far as I know.
Yeah. Do you when you lay, just really quick, I'm going to piggyback on my question really fast. I'm sorry, Stephen. So when you're laying down in bed, when you're about to go to sleep, do you have like a lot of thoughts? Like, are your thoughts loud? Do you ever have a random thought from somebody else's voice ever happen in your mind?
No, I never really, I mean, like, so when they put you in that fight or flight state, that's kind of another question, but like, they'll get you into that state where they're triggering you somehow with, like, usually it's like a fear response, right? And that's something I noticed that they do a lot. And first of all, that's terrible for your body and your makeup, right? We're not meant to be in a state of fight or flight all the time. Like it destroys us. It's meant for like emergencies to either fight or flee. And so they would put me in this state like almost all day sometimes, where I'm constantly like, I can't run anymore. Like, yeah, I didn't really get into that, but there was times where I tried to outrun this stuff for like hours, man, like rolling my ankle downstairs and like literally in fear for my life, I know it seems like I got it together, but there was times where it was bad, and I believe that, when they put you in that state, it's like, first of all, you're not thinking clearly, your body's getting disrupted, you're deteriorating emotionally, physically, mentally, spirit, all of it. You're just like, it's killing you, right? It's like a slow kill. And so, I mean, in that state, yeah, you're going to have loud thoughts and stuff. But as far as like someone else's voice being like boomed in, I didn't really have experience with that. And I know that is the case. And I think in some of my early videos, like I was a little bit like dismissive of that, which I've since made a video about that. It's like my experience isn't everyone's experience, and I don't want to do what people have done to me and discredit me without hearing me out. So like, I totally get that people do experience. That's just not something that I personally have. But it's kind of backtracking to your question, Stephen, when you asked about why I started it. I actually came in contact with a lot of people face to face that have been gang stalked because I'm in addiction ministry and stuff now, and like going through the program with people, and just I realized that I had a gift for like giving people a sense of peace about everything and an understanding about it that they could move forward with, because it puts trauma on you, man, and that it's like it wounds us in deep ways, PTSD, all that stuff, man. And that's what I'm saying. That's kind of the goal, in my opinion. They want to put wounds on us for whatever reason.
Yeah, and just to back up a little bit, because me and Deserie were talking with Debbie last week, our guest last week, about fear. I keep coming back to this, this trauma-based mind control. I think it doesn't work unless you're terrified. Like
yeah.
This whole time that this was happening, I was out of my mind with like anxiety. Doesn't really say it. It's like anxiety to the point of like terror. I was like terrorized the whole time. And also like I felt like stuck. Like I heard you mention a few times that you felt stuck where you were at, but like, and also I would try to run. I would try to like outrun it. I would try to, and nothing I was doing was working. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I keep coming back to that. Like, so that's like, if people are still going through this, like pray. I praying is always a good thing. I pray every day, often, many times a day throughout the day. Pray that God like takes away your spirit of fear, that takes away the fear, and that He gives you the strength just to get through the day. That's just, just one that it can never hurt, right?
Amen.
But anyway, I was
can I respond
about,
to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I keep getting good stuff to say, but we're talking about a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's like the fear piece. I realized that, man, that was such a huge revelation of like, they use your fears against you. So they'll probe and figure out what works best on you. And so if you have a fear of being like injured or death, especially, they're going to play on that all day, and that gives them leverage to your position, because all they have to do is put someone next to you and have him put his hand in his pocket and look at you, and you're going to be like, boom, you're going to be triggered all the way. You went from a state of being like okay to like you said, complete terror. And that's all they have to do. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, they do. Fear is like, in my opinion, one of the most crucial pieces they use to torment you. And so yes, that's why I got so much freedom from putting my trust in God. I went from like running from these people for hours, and it didn't matter where I went, they were there, right? That whole game. And then I started realizing like, I have to trust God, and I have to literally put my hands, or my life, in God's hands and walk through these things, trusting Him. And so God started proving Himself to me. Like, I was in all these situations where I was getting threatened. I had people show me guns. We're going to kill you, all this stuff. But like, God was building my faith in Him. And I realized over, a month and a half or 2 months, while I was on the street, I was getting threatened in all these situations, but no one actually touched me. It was like God like pretty much spoke to me one day. It was like, has anyone touched you though? And I realized that they were just playing on my fear, and like God was protecting me, you know? And so I started getting like pretty bold with it. Like they would show up. Like I remember one time, 3 of them are like coming towards me. Like this is how things shifted. I went from running away, like tail tucked, to like I would walk towards these people. And as soon as someone was trying to like threaten me or something, I would literally like go up to it and cut it off, right? Even though I was scared, you know, but I was trusting in God, and I would just be like, 3 of them were walking at me. Sorry, I'm getting excited. And I literally walked straight through them and shoulder checked them, because I'm walking down the sideways, they're walking towards me. And it was like, I didn't let them intimidate me anymore. And once I started standing and really trusting in God, that fear, I realized, was so pivotal, because it was they were no longer able to control me. That's what they're doing with it. They're controlling your actions. They're controlling your whole day with fear. Like, think about it. Like, go back in your mind and think about how many days you spent looking around and focusing on them, man, and just fear the whole day, like miserable, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I got to say about that. But there's you can talk about that for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just had a quick question on that experience you had in the bathroom with the cop coming in, that you heard the cop coming in, the keys jangling. Because it's kind of like the only other example of something like this that I've heard from somebody else's testimony. Because one time, one of the worst days that I was going through it, I was in my bed, and I saw at first the doorknob start jiggling, and I heard it, and I saw it moving back and forth. And then I saw the door start to pound, and I heard that as well. So I guess, and then more stuff happened, which I'm not going to get into, but more stuff related to that happened. What I guess what I'm asking is, did you visually see the door handle jiggling, or did you only audibly hear that?
No, I saw it as well as heard it. And that reminded me of another story. So I had 2 rounds of this stalking happening, and you know my story. But there was one time where I had a house, you know, I wasn't on the street when this was happening. This was my second time, like, you know, about 2 years ago now. But I was at my house, and it was just like super crazy. This is probably at the peak of like any time of my targeting. That was just like off the charts. But like I was like trying to plug my ears, because I was hearing stuff all outside my house. And like I go into my bedroom, I'm on my bed, I can't sleep because I'm like having to cover my ears every time, you know, that whole gig, right? And so I put my feet onto the floor, and as soon as I do, I feel like someone is punching my floor like 5 times. Boom, boom, like this. My whole floor is coming up, and I know there's no one under my house, dude. Like, but I don't know how they did that. I don't know if it was spirits. I don't know if it was some sort of, you know, weapon or whatever. But I felt it under my feet. I heard it, dude. That shook me. I was like, this is like a new level, right? Because I'm feeling it on my feet, you know. So that did happen to me, and I remember watching your story, and like there was times I had similar things, you know.
Yeah.
Wow, that's actually happened to me too. I mean, it doesn't happen to me anymore, but when I was being targeted, probably the first year of my targeting, I used to always believe that there was a basement or an underground underneath my house, because I would hear, you know, like I'd feel like there was somebody pounding on the floor on my feet. So I believed that there was somebody like had built some kind of a basement to my house, and I couldn't get to it. And then I also would hear, you know, I thought people were in the walls, but actually I was hearing B2K, but I didn't know that that's what was happening to me. So I actually was, I did some, you know, damage to my home by trying to open up the floor to get into I guess, underneath the house when there was nothing underneath
Right.
there. And I ended up getting myself in trouble because I did destroy the house, because I didn't know about the technology. I didn't know about the voices that, you know, that it sounds like people say it's the neighbors, but I didn't have any. I was in a house, so I immediately thought it was people were in my wall. So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
had the same thing, and I've heard several people talk about the pounding on the floors too. So it's just very interesting that you say that. But
Yeah.
but how about your dreams? Have you noticed that you've had like any like very, I guess, vivid, detailed dreams?
Yeah. Yeah, good and bad. A lot I've had, so like um as far as like, okay, so when I got off the street and I was trying to submit to the Lord, all these things, I was in treatment and stuff, I would have a ton of like gang stalking dreams where um in the dreams, basically, can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Yeah, in the dreams, like they were not just people though, they were demons like in my dreams. So they were like, it was like almost like the veil was pulled out, but I would be getting chased through the city by actual demons and not people. So that's interesting. But um I had one dream that I'll share that was kind of like the turnaround as far as having those nightmares and stuff. Like in this dream, I was with two people. I was uh we were robbing this house, and we were like collecting stuff from this bottom room in this house. And so I'm with these two people, and all of a sudden it's like I had this like, realization. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I say that out loud to these two people. I'm like, hey, I'm not doing this no more. And they look at me and they're like, what are you doing, dude? You're tripping. Hurry up. We got to get out of here. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do this anymore. I was like, I'm a soldier for Jesus. I said this in my dream, and this is crazy. It's so vivid. I looked down and I had this huge claymore, like probably like a 4 or 5 foot claymore. And when I said that I'm a soldier for Jesus, I grabbed this claymore, and this sounds corny, but this is what happened. Like, I'm like, blink. I pulled this thing out and like put it to the sky, like I'm off like the Highlander or whatever. And so when I did that, this is crazy. The lightning started shooting off this sword. In the Bible, the sword represents the word of God, right? And it's like I'm wielding this, and I have a gift for teaching and stuff. Now I know this, but this was at the beginning. God was speaking identity to me. So lightning's hitting it, and so the lightning's hitting the sword and going like into my arm, and then it started swirling around me with like very blue and gold, vivid, like whirlwind around me, just swirled in this color, right? And I even had this sensation, wow, that I was getting lifted up into heaven. Like, and I got so excited, my feet left the ground, that I woke up and I was like, wow, that's crazy. But that's when kind of like the dreams started getting better, and I didn't have so much, like, it was almost like I got a little bit of like deliverance from it. And yeah, it was like, that was God was like speaking my identity. Like, you're not doing this old stuff you used to do. Like, you're a soldier for me now, and you're going to speak my word. You're going to, and so that goes into why I do what I do as well.
That's amazing, man. I just want to give some encouragement to people that if anything, like recovery is possible, right? Like, I know that you're doing good things in your life. Same here. Like, I have a long ways to go. I still have a long ways to go, but the amount of good that I've done in the last year and a half has been, I'm doing the best I ever have been. Actually, like what you said earlier, a lot of it, like what they use for evil, God can use for good. He kind of did, because listen, I've been through I've tried to get clean so many times in the past, but nothing. I would always run back to it. It was, the consequences got bigger and bigger, but I would always run back to it. It wasn't until like these last 2 times that I went to relapse. The last 2 times, all this targeting and gang stalking stuff happened with it. So like after this last time, I'm like, okay, I'm done. That's it. I drugs, whether or not they were the cause of it or what, however that's intermingled, I don't know. Anyways, like, I just want to give encouragement to people to, if you are being targeted and you might use or drink, like try not doing that. Try getting clean. Dane, can you tell a little bit about the good things that have happened in your life since you've been clean?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So like I said, with my story of being on the street, and I mean, like, dude, I was pretty much as far out as you could get. I've used syringes that I found in the garbage. That tells you like the type of addiction I was in. No idea whose they were. Um, so I understand addiction, and I understand the depths it can take you to, and all that. But like I'm telling you, like through this is like I've learned that whatever we're facing, God can teach us how to overcome. God really can. He's not some far off, not concerned God. Like he's a personal God. You can have personal encounters. He can speak to you. He can show you where you're off. He can show you, who to be around, who to let go. Like he can just give you the wisdom and the power you need to overcome your addictions, but you're just going to have to surrender your will over. That's it, and that's a hard thing to get to. But yeah. So I've been at it the last 5-6 years since this whole targeting started. Kind of like you, it was a catalyst for me really knowing I needed to change, because it wasn't fun no more. I'm dealing with all this stuff. And yeah, in that time, I've been to the Middle East twice, which I never thought I'd be able to travel. Like I was homeless on the street, right? Went on a couple-month mission trip to Jordan, taught English over there. I went back to Israel. Dude, like, and now I'm a staff member at a recovery year-long discipleship now. So God's using all of my experiences with addiction to now help other people. I met a wonderful girl at the church. Like I have excellent relationships in my life. I have good boundaries. I'm sober. I'm clear-headed. Like, dude, I have money in my bank. Like that. I'm not borrowing. I haven't stolen. I haven't like lied. I don't need to lie. Like it's like, dude, I can't even tell you how many. My life is completely different now. So I know it's like it's rough when you're when you're at the bottom, but you got to hit the bottom before you really realize like you got to get that taste slapped out of your mouth a couple of times, right, Steven?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's been my story, and like I'm telling you, submit to God, surrender your life, and He will use you and give you purpose in your life. That you never thought could be possible.
Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing that like can give people like hope. And since you've been sober, has the targeting stopped?
Yes, it has, and I know that's not every person's story, because some people don't even use the drugs. But yeah, completely. I don't experience any of the targeting, and like what I realized about it too is, as far as the triggers and stuff, that's something that takes a little while to like let go of, because like for me, they were doing stuff like scratching their nose and just like normal stuff that people could be doing, but they would do it so much that even when I wasn't around people who were doing the stalking, it's like I was even triggered, by my family and stuff like that, just them doing normal stuff because of what they sensitize you to, right? And the trauma that's associated to it. So that takes a little while to like kind of go away and just get healing from. But I mean, dude, like I said, my heart, my mind, my physical, my spiritual, everything is better since I did go through the stalking and got healing from the Lord than it was before. Like I was on a bad trajectory in my life before this. So for me, it was all worth it. And like I said, God has used it to shape me and mold me and give me purpose in my life.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's nice to hear. I was targeted, I would say, from the end of 2013 to 2015, and then my targeting stopped for 3 years. For 3 years, and I was able to rebuild my life back. I was able to, I started working, for the corporate world. I got my own place, my own car, and I was like, my whole life had just gotten better. And then one day I just I had an individual that was part of my targeting come over to my house. And that same night, I don't know what happened or what he like. I know what happened. I it's just it's a little personal, but while we were there, the night that we went to sleep, that's when I heard my ears ringing. And I hadn't heard my ears ringing like that in 3 years. And then all of a sudden I was linked back to the program. And then now I don't get any of the gang stalking or the signals or anything. I get is I get dream simulations. I get the directed energy weapons, and just recently I was burned. They burned my stomach. I have radiation burns in my stomach. They did that to me a couple days ago. So I don't know the purposing on why they do that. And then also I don't get the voices during the day, but when I lay down at night when I try to go to sleep, they try to communicate with me as I'm falling asleep. So, but yeah, like not to like say that or to try to scare you in any way, because a lot of times, it does like stop and then happens again. But I think what happened with me is that whatever they found out about me, they said, okay, well, I think that she's, she would make a good candidate for this program. Now I'm in this weird program where it's like some data is being that downloaded into my mind, and I'm seeing all this code and instructions on how to build ships. So that's
Oh,
not normal. You know what I mean? That's just not normal. So I went from the gang stalking to the drugging, and they were, all that stuff, the same thing you went to, and now I'm in this program. So it's just like a little different. That's why I asked like so many questions, because of course I'm still trying to figure it out too. Like I don't have all the answers.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seemed it does seem like the gang stalking is like some sort of like there has to be a purpose for it, right? And I've kind of thought about that too. Like, is it a behavior modification? Is it like are they trying to really see what type of person you are? Because like I could tell there was times in my stalking they were trying to push me in a certain direction, like with like I mean without going into too much details, but like I feel like they wanted me to like use girls to make money and stuff like that, and I wouldn't go that way. It was like I that was a line for me. I'm like that's not right, that's evil, and so there was like opportunities that I had that they were like making very easy for me, and they wanted me to go that route, I felt like. But I know that the things that I said and believed and didn't believe during the stalking altered how it played out, how it manifested, and I didn't really get into that, but that's how I know there's something to it. Because like I had people, that one girl that was telling me about the signals and stuff, where she's like, you're not crazy. She gave me like a list of reasons why it was happening, and like it would always switch. Like I was told that everything out there was being recorded, that the block I was on was like a board game and like there's real money involved. Like they went into like some crazy stuff. Someone told me the drug gang's watching you and you're taking their money and they're after you. And it's like all these things, like they had some truth in it, like, and it made sense, but nothing ever stuck with me until I started thinking about it spiritually. And it's like it seemed like every time I started getting on the spiritual side of it, they would send someone in to be like, try to divert me back to like a physical reason. So I thought that was weird. And I also think it's weird because like I've found freedom in spiritual, just not getting into too many of like, these little side quests they want me on, like just thinking about it in a broad sense. Like, in the Bible it says that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. So behind everything that we're seeing in the physical, even if it is a program, there's real evil that's involved with it. The people that are running this, the program or carrying it out, like, dude, there's evil behind that, because you can't say that this whole phenomenon isn't evil. It's like they're basically slow killing, and torturing and tormenting and harassing, and it's like, dude, it's evil and like personified, really. So yeah,
That's really interesting that you said that, or that you that you mentioned that it's like it could be a behavior modification, and that you often think about if you had acted different, if it would have turned out differently. I think about that a lot in my own case too. Like And that's another reason why I felt like God's protection was over me, because especially in that first apartment I was at, like, man, like I was having like plans to like meet up with whoever was the V2K was. Like there was this whole like script going on that like, oh, I had to join them, and I had like, and I remember saying like I also didn't have any cell phones because like they were either hacked or I ripped into them trying to find the speakers or whatever. So I didn't have any, and I remember like talking to him like, well, you gotta give me a phone, like, so we kind of had plans to like meet that day, the next day, and I remember, and they were like making plans. Well, you gotta not take any drugs until like 6 p.m. and we'll come at 6 p.m. So I did it. Like I really wanted this to stop. I was desperate. And I remember like waiting there until 6 p.m. and they never came. Nobody ever showed up. It was, and then like something came over me just to like get out of that place. I flushed all my drugs down the toilet and I just ran. I got away from that apartment. I went into detox and just started my life over again. But I often wonder, like, what if I stayed there? Like, what if I had reacted different and kept listening to those like little suggestions and like, which was all probably just a lie and a deception to like further make things worse for me. But and yeah, to Deserie's point about like how it stopped for 3 years and then started again, that's like a huge reason why I'm like cautious to say that I'm like an ex-target, or I'm not a target anymore, because not enough time has passed. It's only been a year and a half. And also, Deserie, I want to give you some props. Like, she's been in this community for a lot longer than I have. I've seen some videos of her. Like she said, like 10 years old. She's done interviews with John Hall, Robert Duncan, which is like a huge reason why I reached out to her initially and wanted to start this. But and just one last thing I'll say is like, sometimes it's best not to like dwell on things like that. Like, oh, is it over? Is it going to happen again? Is it what's happening? What exactly is this? Like, I told you this, Dane, when we talked one time, like when I pray to God, like one of my main prayers is like, thank you for delivering me from this today. Like tomorrow, if you see fit to allow me to go through this again, please give me the strength and resilience necessary to get through it without reverting back to my old ways, without going back to drugs. So that's like where I try to keep it. I don't know. So anyways, I think we're kind of out of time. Dane, is there any last thing you wanted to say before?
Wait, before we end, can I want to like say something really fast, and then we
yes,
can
definitely,
have, if that's okay. Okay, so I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget to say it, but I just wanted to say, like, if Dane probably doesn't know my story, but you know my story. And I told you this before, that there's a lot of similarities that I see with you and with Dane, with my boyfriend Richard, who passed away. And if what Richard was going through was he was being targeted, and when I met him, he was sober. Okay, he was sober, and he was living in a sober living home, or I don't know what you call it, but that he was living in one of those sober living rehab centers. And when I met him, he said he was a targeted individual, and that we started communicating. I really got to know him, and we ended up starting, to date each other, and it got pretty serious. And we started to build a life together, and we lived together, and he had full blown V2K. And then one day, out of the blue, I just came home, and he smelled like alcohol. And if you're an addict, you're not even supposed to drink alcohol or anything like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're drinking, you're not supposed to be drinking. And then a couple days later, full blown on drugs, any kind of drug you can think of. And he completely had like lost his mind, and he started to believe that I was hiding invisible people inside of my room. And that I was part of the targeting, and that I was talking about him, and I was involved in it. And then it wasn't even 3 weeks later, he kills himself. And that's why, like, I'm saying that this program, I mean, can get you to do the most, I mean, probably the worst thing to do is to off yourself, because you have no control of what you're doing. And I know that if he wasn't on drugs and also being targeted, none of that would have happened. But anyways, I can see his spirit within you guys. That's why I brought that up.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm so sorry for that, Desiree. It's like I've had that thought where, like I know that this program does drive people to that point because I was close, and we can talk about that maybe in the next time I come on, because I still have a lot more we can talk about. But yeah, it's brutal. I mean, it is, like I said, it's evil, and it's pushing people to that point of literally death. And if they're not wanting to kill themselves, they're slowly trying to kill them, and emotionally, spiritually, physically. It's like, I mean, it's just constant battle. So yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah,
And
it's ugly. It's an ugly program, and and I've seen people lose their lives over it, and it was a disturbing because a lot like was a lot like both of you, and he was a singer songwriter. He played the guitar. He was very handsome, and he was just like full of charisma. And then this happened to him, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, they can actually push somebody that far where they take their life. And
yeah,
then he actually wrote a suicide note saying that he did it because of the invisible people, and then he blamed some of it on me, or most of it on me, but I wasn't involved in it. But you see how he had thought I was involved in it, and I wasn't. And see how TIs can think that their family's involved when they're not. So I got to live both. I got to live as a target, and I got to live as a family member of a targeted individual. So I got both sides of it. So,
yeah.
but I see you two being very strong, and I'm very proud of both of you. And I wish he could have, got or went and done what you guys did.
Right. Well, with people coming on here and speaking the truth that they know, and sharing their stories, it's like this. I know it's making a difference, because it did for me when I started seeing people. I'm like, wow, there's no way this guy experienced exactly what I did, yet he doesn't know me. I haven't even shared some of this stuff. So just, it's very validating, like, obviously we know we're going through this thing, but hearing that other people are going through it too is like, it's helpful. So appreciate everyone watching, and thank you guys for having me on, and just let me know when we can do another one.
Definitely. Thanks, Dane.
All right.
Okay.
Later, guys.
And okay, thanks guys. Bye-bye. If I can press